Okay, Mr. Watson here, and in this video we're going to look at the dysfunctional aspect of the Olympic Games, and in particular we'll be having a heavy focus on doping at the Olympics. So let's start with the Olympic oath. Now, the Olympic oath was first introduced in 1920. It was taken by an athlete of the host country, and it was protocol of the opening ceremony. Okay, some very similar points to now. However, over time, there's been some changes. In 1972, a judge swore an oath alongside the athlete. Okay, in 2012, a coach now swears by the oath, and that come about due to coaches being heavily involved in the cheating. In some cases, the coaches are the ones that persuade the athletes to do it. And a change between the ancient Olympics and the modern Olympics. Back in the ancient Olympics, the oath was taken with a sacrificed animal, whereas nowadays the athlete holds the corner of the Olympic flag. And there was some further changes in Pyeongchang, and it was to do with saving time. A representative says their own part in the name of all athletes or in the name of all judges, in the name of all coaches and officials. Okay, so that was brought in to save some time. But CIE wants us to focus on the Olympic Oath 2000. Okay, now this is because in bold there, this is where a line was added to the oath which commit ourselves to sport without doping and cheating. Okay, so this is quite a significant moment. The rumours of the widespread drug taking in the Olympics, they've been trying to stamp it out for years, and this is one of the key changes that they did with the Olympic oath. So it was taken by athletes representing each country in 2000. It was in the language of the host city, abiding by the rules, and no doping included. That's some key points about the Olympic Oath 2000. Okay, so with playing into the Olympism and that fair play ideals, okay, you're abiding by the rules. That's how you can conform through taking the oath. Now, we have the win at all cost ethic. Now, this is something we need to clarify now. Like, even though we have a heavy focus on doping, winning at all costs isn't just related to doping. It could be cheating, gamesmanship, going against the fair play ideals, bribery, etc. There are other forms of win at all costs ethics. Basically, you will do anything to win, even if that involves cheating. Okay, so it's not exclusive to doping. We just need to clarify that now. So we're going to take a look at some examples. Okay, so Montreal 1976, obviously this is famous from an economic standpoint in that it was in debt for 30 years, big security costs, etc., all the Taiwan issues. And then what happened was there was some equipment modification going on from a Russian athlete. And what had happened is they'd rewired his electronic sensing technology, so it was tricking the system in fencing to think that he'd scored a hit. So all he had to do is make it look like he'd struck his opponent, okay, and then he'd flick a switch and it would flash up as a touch and he would score a point. So this is an example of win at all cost ethic. You'll go as far as modifying your equipment to cheat in order to get that win. All we care about is winning. Seoul 1988, bribery. Now this is quite a one. Now while Seoul 1988 was brilliant, brought the Paralympics and the Olympics together, okay, it had some other issues going on there. Now Roy Jones Jr. here, this was quite a scandal. So Jones was a formidable boxer, and speaking now, in 2021, he's down as one of the all-time greats. However, back in his Olympic days, it's claimed that judges were bought off, and funnily enough, the other finalists were the South Korean in Seoul, and he got the decision 3-2. And, everybody knew this was a scandal. Okay, and what happened is actually this affected American boxing at the Olympics. You had excellent boxers just turning professional from a young age because they were like, I'm not going to go and see what happened to Roy Jones. So they just stopped going to the Olympics. So that was a case of bribery of the judges. Then in London 2012, age falsification. Okay, the International Gymnastics Federation ruled that Hong Soo-jong had listed 3 different birth dates in previous competitions starting from 2003, and what it would have meant is that she'd have been too young to compete at Athens 2004. However, they didn't effectively ban her from thing until later. Okay, so modifying your age falsification, again, examples of win at all cost ethics. London 2012 again, we had match fixing. So 8 female badminton players, they're all disqualified. The way the draw had been done, they were going to have to play some strong opposition in earlier rounds if they were winning. So what they decided to do, they tried to throw the games and lose on purpose so they could face easier opposition and wait to play the strong opposition in the final. So that led to 8 badminton players being disqualified. Bribery in Rio 2016. It was claimed that he paid $2 million to buy votes, ensuring that Rio would be chosen to host the games. Okay, someone come clean and told who the money went to, and basically one of the former presidents of the Athletics Federation. Okay, and this $2 million was used to buy as many as 9 votes. Now, the big one in this, even though it's not exclusive, is doping. The Olympic Games is being littered with doping claims throughout the years. So we're just going to have a quick scan across the timeline. So 1928, the International Athletics Federation banned the use of stimulants. It wasn't until 40 years later that the Olympic Games finally had some drugs testing. 76, they banned anabolic steroids once they discovered what they were. 79, they started testing for all illegal drugs. 86, blood doping. And then a big one, 1999, just before the Sydney Games in 2000, the World Anti-Doping Agency was founded and started getting some funding from the IOC to try and really stamp this out. And we'll see if that had any effect in the 2000 Games. And then in the Olympics testing, they were testing for EPO. So it's taken quite a while to get on top of this. So where did it all start? Where did the thought come that athletes might be cheating? Now, I've got a little story here from drug use in East Germany. Now, this is one where you might want to pause and read it fully. But it involves a female athlete, and when she was in her Olympic camp, she had to say and swear that she'd never tell anyone about the training methods. And obviously, as an aspiring Olympian, she'd agreed. And then one day her trainer was giving her pills, and she wasn't sure what they were, but the trainer was just like, they'll improve your performance, but they're vitamins. They're just vitamins. But what happened is she started getting cramps in her legs, her voice became gruff, she started to grow a mustache, it was affecting her periods, etc. So it was quite clear she was taking anabolic steroids. She then refused to take the pills, and then one morning she was taken away by the secret police asking why she was refusing to take the pills. And then luckily she decided to flee with her fiancé and get away, but they quite clearly didn't want anything getting out from East Berlin that they were giving their athletes steroids. Then we had rumours in Russia that a British journalist had said that agency officers from the KGB had posed and pretended to be anti-doping authorities from the IOC. And basically, just to get their Soviet athletes away, they came in and were like, no, these athletes are fine, they're not cheating. but actually they were just posing as officers. So obviously they got their Soviet athletes off. And then in an Australian study, there was this quote from the 1918 Moscow Olympics, which many had boycotted, as we know. There is hardly a medal winner at the Moscow Games, certainly not a gold medal winner, who is not on one sort of drug or another, usually several kinds. The Moscow Games might as well have been called the Chemist Games. So there were rumours flying around that drug taking was widespread. So the IOC, to maintain the standards of Olympism, they needed to get a hold of this. Okay. So they started introducing bans, as if to say you'll pay the price for taking drugs and make it higher risk if you'd like to try and cheat. Okay. So for prohibited substances, they were bringing in, on your first offence, 2-year ban, second offence, lifetime, unless there were exceptional circumstances. This links to the banned drugs. This is quite lengthy, and sometimes people, through being uneducated, will take a drink of something that can be bought in a 7-Eleven, and it might have something in, like a Red Bull, and it might have an ingredient in that's on the banned list. But they're quite tight with that now. There's still no. And then specified substances, if they specify what it is, they can get a 1-year ban, 2-year ban for second, and then a lifetime on the third. If they refuse to take a drugs test, 2-year ban. If you refuse the second time or try to tamper with your test, lifetime. Those that are supplying the drugs, the trafficking, minimum 4 years or up to a lifetime of ineligibility on the first violation. And they brought in this whereabouts thing so that you could do drugs testing year-round and not just at the time of the competition. And if you fail to state your whereabouts, you get a 3-month to 2-year ban. So they did bring bans in place to try and put off athletes from taking the risk. Otherwise, they would pay the price. How does a ban work? It starts on the date of the hearing decision, or if they can justify it earlier. And then the athlete should not participate in any capacity, okay, including training. Some or near enough all sport-related financial support would be withheld. It would stop, okay. They still need to be available for out-of-competition testing, even though they're banned, and still provide their whereabouts, okay? Just so that if they've just got a first offence 2-year ban, they can still probably compete in the next Olympic cycle. So they want to know that they're currently not still taking, because they'll probably still be training, even though they're not supposed to participate in any capacity. So testing, as we can see with them bans, testing was brought in as a deterrent. And it's important, though, that there were some standards with this. The IOC got the testing right. And this is a screen you might want to pause on, as it's just a list of some of the standards. Well, here's some of the standards. They needed to ensure that all athletes are tested in the same manner wherever they are. They have to, like, a bit like when you carry out fitness tests, okay? You need it to be valid, you need it to be reliable. So they need to be tested in the same manner. Again, sometimes it can be the coach encouraging, etc., etc. So the athlete's identity, it needed to be kept until they were proven guilty. Okay, and the security of the samples. Ensure a worldwide system and where results apply across boundaries. Now, what I'm guessing this means, as I know in boxing, is a lot of people will test positive for banned substances, but they'll only be banned in America, and then they'll go and fight in Europe, or they'll come and fight in the UK. It's important that when you're banned, it's a worldwide system and the result apply all over the world. Okay, and then the same thing, athletes must be available to provide their whereabouts. So let's just take a look at what the IOC have done, what the actions again. 67, 68, they banned the use of performance-enhancing drugs. Tests were introduced in the 68 Olympics. WADA was set up in 99, okay, partially funded by the IOC. They oversee the testing of the Olympic Games. Blood and urine samples are kept for years after the event. One of the key reasons for that is if a drug is then known later years, and they didn't know about it at the time, if they have some samples from previous years, they can go and check if athletes were using that for doping, and then they can, because they do go back and strip medals now. Even if you got the medals years before, they'll go back and strip them. Okay, obviously we've talked about this about 4 times now. They've introduced the whereabouts system, and yeah, they'll go back and strip medals. But the key point here, which I've skipped over, is they're starting to bring in more education. Educating these young athletes from a much earlier age is necessary in order to, and they need to educate the coaches and the nutritionists on what's actually on that list and what athletes shouldn't be drinking and eating. Okay, so here's some examples of doping, and a big one in the CIE syllabus is the dirtiest race, the big drug bust in Seoul 1988. 10 athletes were caught for doping at this Olympics, were caught for doping, only 10. And the original winner of this 100-meter sprint was Ben Johnson, but he was stripped of the gold medal for testing positive for steroids. So the medal was given to the second place finisher, Carl Lewis. However, he tested positive for drugs prior to the games. He just already served his ban. Britain's Linford Christie, who was upgraded to the silver medal because he finished third, he tested positive before the games as well. The fourth place runner was the best finisher who actually hadn't tested positive for drugs at all before, during, or after. Okay, so this is known as the dirtiest race. Okay. Then in Sydney 2000, while it's claimed, and we'll go on to that, for being a successful Olympics in tackling doping, there was still some athletes caught. It was much lower than other Olympics. However, Marion Jones was the first woman to win 5 track and field medals at a single games. However, there'd been allegations that she'd been using steroids, and then finally through a federal investigation, she owned up to everything, and she was stripped of all of her titles, all of her medals, and she actually served 6 months in prison. Now, Salt Lake Games, I've added this in the doping part because the original slide was going to be Salt Lake Games and the EPO Games, which we'll go into in a moment. But Cambridge wanted to focus on Salt Lake, so I'm going to put this in the doping section because I'm going to cover both back to back. Now, at the Salt Lake Games in 2002, there was a big bribery scandal, and this scandal forced the resignation of leaders who were organising the Winter Olympics. And the Salt Lake City were previously denied the Olympics with failed bids, and they were desperate to host the Games. And then in the end, they finally got the vote in 95, and what came out is that the NOC acknowledged that cash payments and other benefits were provided to members of the IOC. So again, the IOC come under the spotlight. This was one of the reasons with them choosing the host Olympic Games. There's always going to be a case for bribery, and Salt Lake City was one of them. However, it's in the doping section because also at the Salt Lake Games, we had the EPO Games. We were supposed to be testing for EPO since 2000 at Sydney. And luckily that testing had been brought in because we caught a load of athletes cheating at the Salt Lake Games. Now, why do we associate Sydney as the best ever? Okay, this often comes up in the exam, and it's just in the Olympics research and knowledge. Some say, oh, it's the best ever from a doping standpoint, and others. And what it is even though athletes tested positive for drugs, like I've just said, Marion Jones, there were fewer than 10 that were caught doping. They finally had an Olympic oath, which was used at the Sydney Games, including a promise not to dope. WADA was developed just before and overseeing the testing for Sydney. There weren't any security and terrorist threats. There's no evidence of bribery or corruption, and positive legacy was a focus. And I'm also sure, maybe shouldn't say this on video, but I'm sure North Korea and South Korea both competed for the first time at the Games. Could be wrong on that, but these are some of the points why Sydney is listed as the best ever. Okay. Why might an athlete want to dope? So are these genuine reasons or just excuses? So what makes an athlete want to dope? So obviously we have the win at all cost ethics. They're desperate to win. They have pressure from their country, pressure from their coaches, or maybe they're just ego driven themselves. They're desperate to win. So that's one reason. Taking ergogenic aids, PEDs, performing enhancing drugs, they have ability to train at higher intensity, longer duration. If they're reducing fatigue, they'll recover faster. They can train more, train at higher intensity, longer duration. Helps them lose weight. EPO, it helps increase red blood cells. A lot claim that it's the only way to compete at the highest level. If we refer back to Seoul 88, the top three were all taking drugs. Maybe they knew they all were, so they knew that they had to take them in order to compete, because if you don't take them, you finish fourth. Like the only clean athlete in that top four. Okay? They may have been granted a therapeutic use exemption. They may have a genuine medical reason to be doping. And as I've just said, pressure, that peer pressure, win at all cost ethics from peers, coaches, your country. Okay? What reasons might they give when they've been caught? Well, like I've just mentioned in the last slide, it levels the playing field as everyone's cheating. Okay? People claim that their technology is going too far. You know, these trainers that are being worn to get the fastest marathon times, the bicycles, the swimsuits. People are modifying technology and fencing. So why not put things into the system? Again, that's just one of the reasons some athletes might give. They'll claim some drugs are unnatural, but testosterone is natural. This is the reasons they're saying. With steroids, it helps testosterone, it's natural. Some drugs are not proven to be necessarily harmful, because like I said, this list, this banned list is extensive, and you can just find it in everyday food products. Some sports are more harmful than actual drugs. Boxing obviously gets its critics due to numerous blows to the head just in a normal fight. And as we've seen, as the evidence on concussion has progressed from rugby, American football, and boxing, okay, it's a big thing. These sports may be more harmful in nature than taking drugs. And some drugs are illegal, like your recreationals, your cocaine, etc. But not all substances are illegal that these athletes are using. So they're using these to raise their case, okay? So you can look at this as, it's often like a reform question in section 11 about drugs in the use at the Olympics. And these is what some of the athletes give. And just finishing up, how to prevent dysfunctional aspects at the Olympics. Can it be done? And like I said, back to dysfunctional aspects and that win at all cost ethics, not just doping, the bribery, the equipment modification, etc. So what you can do, these are some suggestions. Employ the best officials to prevent corruption and bribery. Get those in with a clean record, the ones who have a good track record of never being involved in something like that. Strict punishments for any dysfunctional aspect involvement, okay? Some claim, and again this comes up in the reform question, maybe just lifetime bans on first offences, okay? Maybe punish the country, even though they can't control all athletes. If you start punishing the country, it's a bit like at school, someone talks for everyone in detention. It's not fair because only one person talks, but you know, if they want to stop drugs in the Olympics, you punish the country will start ramping up their own testing. Okay? Drugs testing before and after the Olympics, the IOC do that now with the whereabouts system. Education, that is probably the way forward. Start the education of everyone involved in the Olympics from a young age. Let them know what's on the list, why it's on the list, the side effects, the consequences, etc., etc. And IOC, give up some more of that money. Okay? I know we we saw they put in 90% overall back in, but how much goes to doping? WADA is partially funded, maybe it should be fully funded. Maybe IOC should fully fund the act against doping, because ultimately they're the overarching authority trying to promote Olympism and fair play ideals. There needs to be a lot of money going into this, and they need to protect the clean athletes. There's some athletes training year-round, really hard. Some get themselves into debt until they can get that sponsorship. These athletes need to be protected because these are the ones representing Olympism. Okay, so another lengthy video, but that covers dysfunctional aspects. Lots of examples from you there. Bit of history on doping, and what can be done, what excuses do athletes give, etc. Okay, thank you.